of the Economy, Regeneration and Development Committee. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Councillor Tony Jones. I chair this meeting. I'm obliged to read out a webcast notice. This meeting is being webcast and a record retained on the Council website. For those at home viewing the webcast, I'd like to inform you that if you look above the video, you will see a resource tab. Select this and a link to the agenda will appear in the right-hand side. This will allow you to open the agenda in PDF form and follow the discussion and the debate as we progress through the agenda items. Item 2. Do I have any apologies for absence? No, no apologies for absence. That brings us to item 3, members' declarations of interest. Can I ask if any members have any declarations of interest, whether they have any pecuniary or other relevant interests in connection with any item on this agenda, and if so, to declare them and state the nature of that interest. I take it by the silence that no one has any declarations of interest. Other than myself, I have prejudicial interest in relation to agenda items 6, 7 and 10 by virtue of being a board member of the Wirral Growth Company. And I intend to leave the chamber during the discussion of those items on the agenda and pass the chair over to the Vice Chair or Deputy Chair, Councillor Andrew Hodson. That brings us to item 4, and I would ask whether or not members are minded to approve the accuracy of the meeting minutes held on the 8th of June 2021. Everyone's happy with those minutes? Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 5, public and member questions. With regard to public questions, none have been received. With regard to statements and petitions, none have been received. And with regard to questions by members, none have been received. Exempt items. We have one part exempt item and one fully exempt item. And it would be my suggestion that we treat the exempt items en bloc rather than reading an exemption notice for each of them. If members wish to discuss agenda item 6 in a closed session, they should confirm now, and the committee can agree that by assent. Councillor Burgess-Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can appreciate why those might be closed, but I wonder if, for the purposes of anybody watching, that we could explain why we feel those need to be exempt from public viewing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. McCourt, would you mind taking that question, please? Sally, would you be better placed answering that question then, please?
Certainly, Chair. The reason that we have exempt items connected to the report, this agenda item 6 about the Wirral Growth Company, is that in the exempt appendices there are commercially confidential details which are obviously under the Local Government Act. that means that we are able to say that we can have conversations which are not open to the public. Obviously, what we've done with this report is that we've written a report that is a public report, so as much of the information as possible we have put into the public domain, but there are elements that we can't include because of the commercially confidential nature of them.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Burgess-Joyce?
Yes, forgive me for asking it, but I think it's important for people who aren't familiar with the process. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Councillor Mitchell, did you have a question?
I was just highlighting that the press is in the corner, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 6, and as I mentioned in my declaration, I will now leave the meeting and ask my Vice Chair to take over the Chair's position. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me? Right, we've gone through about whether we want to make this exempt, so we can now move on to the presentation of the report, which is you, Sally.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek a member endorsement to the formal site development plan, which I'll call the SDP, for Phase 1 of Birkenhead Town Centre. This will be in order to bring forward the construction of the first 2 new office buildings in Birkenhead.
Sorry, Sally. Are we okay with proceeding?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, this is a report in 2 parts, members. So the intention is to discuss in public session as much as is possible. And hopefully there's enough information there that you will have read the exempt elements and be able to debate in public. However, if any member wishes to debate or discuss any matter in the exempt part of the report, then please say so, and then the Chair can move to go into exempt for that discussion. But the intention is to take as much as possible in public. Thank you.
Apologies. Okay, so just to quickly recap, the purpose of the report is to bring forward for members' endorsement the formal site development plan for the first phase of Birkenhead Town Centre, which is the construction of the first 2 new offices in Birkenhead. This is the culmination of the work that has taken place over the last 2 years since the Council agreed the Wirral Growth Company partnership agreement with Muse back in March 2019. Members have seen and agreed a number of reports since that time, which have marked key milestones. For instance, the Partnership Business Plan in February 2020 brought forward a draft site development plan, which is obviously you're now considering the finalised one today. We've also brought forward the purchase of part of Milton pavements, which have now been cleared to provide the site for the 2 new offices. Now that the Wirral Growth Company has obtained planning permission for the Phase 1 of the scheme, we are able to bring forward the formal site development plan for approval. In addition, the proposed SDP was approved by the Wirral Growth Company at the JV board at its meeting on the 1st of July 2021. Turning now to the background, the Wirral Growth Company's plans for Birkenhead are a key part of the Council's regeneration proposals for the borough and will help to deliver a number of the outcomes within the Wirral plan. The creation of the new commercial district in the heart of the town will act as a catalyst for further investment by the Wirral Growth Company, but also produce confidence in the town centre as a location for people to work in and to invest in, and will kickstart a range of other projects for which we've been successful in securing government funding. For instance, we have secured £25 million of Future High Streets funding, and also recently the announcement of £25 million from the government's Town Deal programme. So phase one, as I've said, will see the construction of 2 office buildings. The first one is, there are two sides. One is a larger building, A1, and that will be circa 90,000 square foot, and this will be occupied by the council, whilst the second building, at around 60,000 square feet, will be let on the open market to commercial tenants. We've been very mindful to ensure that the Wirral Growth Company developments support our climate strategy, and the new buildings will therefore be constructed to what's known as BREEAM excellent standard, and therefore have been designed to secure very high sort of environmentally friendly ratings. The offices will also sit within a high quality public realm that will provide sort of pedestrian routes through the Birkenhead Town Centre, and this will reflect the Council's emerging design guide, and which we have put in place in order to ensure that the buildings that come forward as part of the developments are of a sufficiently high standard. In terms of planning, following extensive public consultation, the Growth Company submitted a hybrid planning application for the first phase on the 19th of August 2020. The application included outline consent for a mix of uses over the wider master plan area, which covers just under 27.5 acres, together with detailed consent for the development of the 2 office blocks, as I've outlined. Also contained within that planning permission is a request to construct a new primary substation on council land to the rear of Europa Pools to enable the development to come forward. The planning application was approved on the 29th of April, and a Section 106 agreement has now been concluded, allowing a planning approval decision notice to be issued to the Wirral Growth Company. This, together with the securing of a funder, has enabled the construction, or the conditions to be met that will enable the construction of the office buildings to start in early October. And the key milestones are set out in Section 3.10 of this report. In addition, as part of the Phase 1, the Wirral Growth Company has developed a social value plan that will ensure that they and their subcontractors meet their environmental and social obligations, including the creation of job opportunities, in creating of environmental policies and plans, and to make sure that there is a focus on the groups that we, as a council, have identified as being our target groups for support with employment. These are really the key elements of the report, and members are requested to note the recommendation, which is to request that Policy and Resources Committee approve the formal site development plan for Birkenhead Commercial District Phase 1. I'd be very happy to take any questions.
You took the words out of my mouth then. I've got to invite questions or comments from any of the committee, and I thought David, and then yourself over there. Okay.
Thanks, Sally, for that. Just a quick one on your risk register. I noticed about the market uncertainty. I mean, is there a fallback position for that one with regards to market uncertainty going forward once the buildings have taken shape?
Thank you, through the chair. We've been constantly monitoring this because clearly with COVID as well, there's been,
Sally, could you just speak nearer the mic? Because
sorry,
the acoustics in here are terrible.
Right. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. Yes, we've been monitoring the situation because clearly we need to make sure that we have got demand, and we have work that's been ongoing for some time now around a letting strategy. And I can report that we actually have some very strong interest in the second building, to the extent that we may well be in a position where we have got some very early pre-lets. So I can't say anything more, but it's very encouraging. And we certainly, in terms of the planning that we're doing, we're taking that into account, making sure that we do investigate all the potential markets that we could have for the lettings of the buildings.
Okay. Councillor?
Hi, Sally. So in section 10.1 outlines the environment and climate implications. It's really positive that we're regenerating the town centre and actively looking to locate key employment sites close to public transport links. The plans have a welcome focus on water management and landscaping. It's increasingly recognised that trees have a vital cooling role to play during heat waves and absorbing water as rainfall becomes more intense. It's also incredibly important that we make good on the stated aim to improve cycle and pedestrian networks in and around the town centre to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to move around safely and sustainably and transform the way the town looks and feels. There is also reference in 10.1 to our agreed goal for a net zero carbon Wirral by 2041. Despite the aspiration to achieve a BREEAM excellent status, this would still mean the development has a positive carbon footprint. New development should be achieving net zero if we are serious about our climate aspirations. It's disappointing that unlike the new Hythe office development at Wirral Waters, there is no provision for renewable energy such as ground source heating or solar panels for electricity or water heating. Given the long-term nature of this development, there is a clear opportunity to invest now to save money over the long term to help Wirral meet its climate obligations. So my initial question is why is there...
Have you got a question for Sally?
I was just doing it. So my initial question, why is there no provision for renewable energy in the plans?
Thank you, Councillor. What we've done is that where possible, we have, you've referred to BREEAM Excellent. We've obviously looked as how we can push that as far as possible. So BREEAM Outstanding is something that is very, very difficult to achieve. But there are elements of the design of the building that actually do meet some of those BREEAM Outstanding requirements. So in terms of what we're able to do in terms of the climate emergency and meeting our carbon neutral ambitions, we've gone quite as far, well, we have gone quite far with that building. Where in terms of the renewables, we certainly had expected, in terms of the district heating system that we, as you've referred to at the Hythe, in terms of the plans that were in place for the office in Birkenhead, what we have done is made sure that they are able to take advantage of any district heating system that comes forward, so that it may not be built into it now, but as further plans emerge, we're not cutting it out as a possibility, so that they will be able to be taken on board in the future.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I'm sure everyone would agree that the best time to incorporate the technology is now rather than later, because that obviously it's more costly further down the line than if you do it as you're building it. And I feel not enough has been done to consider and factor this in the beginning. I would therefore propose that the committee adds the following recommendation. Committee notes with concern the lack of any renewable energy infrastructure within the development plan. Committee requests that the Wirral Growth Company be asked to reconsider the aspect and report back to officers on the following: the reasons why renewable energy does not form part of the current plans, the potential for its inclusion during the construction phase, and steps required to achieve this, in order to report back to the September meeting of this committee.
I think that's a question probably to the committee, but as I say, I think we have done, in terms of the energy efficiency of the building, we may not have incorporated solar panels, but in terms of the opportunity to use, obviously renewable energy, in terms of the electricity, there will not obviously be any sort of gas or sort of in terms of the power source that's being used. So I think we've been as clean. I would suggest that the Growth Company has come forward with proposals that is as clean as possible. And certainly it is, I think it's the focus on energy efficiency that's been a key part of this building, that I think, and certainly meeting that BREEAM standard and meeting that EPC rating, I think it's very strong. There's been a lot of work that's gone on in order to deliver on those outcomes.
Okay, so could we have the information as to why it was not possible to include it in this site and it is in the other one for the renewables?
I can certainly provide that information.
Okay,
definitely.
thank you.
Have you finished asking questions? Have you got that amendment in writing? What you just read out, you want to amendment? Have you got it in writing? Yes. Can we pass? When we come to the end of this section, we'll put it to the vote, okay? But can you pass it to the clerk so they've got it? Save you reading it all out again so he has to note it down, all right? Andrew Gardner.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Sally. Nice to see you. Similar to David, really, on the risk sort of matrix. Office buildings not constructed to agreed brief and specification, impact low, and I just think if they're not built to the agreed spec, even though there is REBA and Avison Young involved. The problem there is we won't know they're not to agreed spec until they're finished and we probably pay the bill. So I think impact low doesn't seem to sit right with me. And just one further question, really, because obviously we're having to sign this off tonight. And I think what should be on the risk register here is that we are going to build these offices and we're still not seeing transport infrastructure around them, and we're still not seeing all the criteria for full development in that area. So I think that the extra risk that actually we are building these standalone at our own risk, and we're not bringing forward the other proposals around that for leisure and culture and transport infrastructure.
Could I just, thank you, Councillor. I think in terms of the other proposals that are coming forward, that the reason that this is coming forward first is that it is through the surplus that will be created from some of the development that we will be able to fund and kickstart some of the other stages of and other phases of the development of the town centre. Also, in terms of the transport infrastructure, there is, as part of the Future High Streets funding, there is a number of active travel proposals and junctions improvements that are taking place at Conway Street and Europa Boulevard that will definitely improve accessibility to the town centre. So I think that is although I completely understand your point, I think that in terms of the risk, it is about a phased development, and that will bring that these other elements will be coming forward as part of future phases.
Does anybody else want to make a contribution? Is that it? Do you want to read out your amendments again so everyone can hear it? Councillor Gleaves.
Microphone on, please. Thank you.
So the amendment requests that the Wirral Growth Company be asked to consider this aspect and report back to officers on the following: the reasons why renewable energy does not form part of the current plans, and the potential for its inclusion during the construction phase and steps required to achieve this, in order to report back to the September meeting of this committee. Is that okay? Yeah.
I was talking to myself, actually. Item 8, this recommendation that the Economic Regeneration and Development Committee requests that the Policy Resources Committee approves the formal site development plan for Birkenhead Commercial District Phase 1. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Dave. Do we all agree? Can you do a show of hands, please? That's passed then. Thank you. Right, what are we doing now? It's item 7. Wirral Growth Government's arrangements. We've got Phil McCourt to present the report on this.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you'll be pleased to know this is a short and sweet report. There is one correction to be made, which is currently it's down as a straight recommendation, but it is actually a recommendation on to Policy and Resources Committee, that felt that it should come here first because of the involvement of this committee in the regeneration projects and its oversight of the joint venture. Currently, members, there are 4 appointments to the Partnership Board for this council and 4 from Muse, our partners. At the moment, because of a change of staff, then there is a changing of the guard, so to speak, in terms of the officers, but currently within the extent decision, It is the post rather than the person, so it is Director of Children's Services and the Assistant Director for Finance and Investments who sit on that board, and the view of the committee is sought as to a continuation and support for continuation of that process. The other appointments are currently member appointments. One is vacant and the other is the chair of this committee. Thus, you'll see the effect in that he's had to leave the room. So the request is that 2 further members be found. It does not need to be from this committee, it can be from anywhere within the council, but of course there is also the other alternative that it not be members and thus creating conflict of interest, that be 2 further officers. But that's a matter for you as members to debate and make such recommendations as you see fit to Policy and Resources.
Thank you, Chair.
I was going to ask that question. It can be 4 officers in total, can't it? Okay. Does anyone want to make any comments or questions? I mean, how do we feel about 4 officers taking over the growth company? You're nodding your head there, Dave.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's one of the wise decisions this committee could make, actually, that we allow it to be officer-led, because we'll be able to scrutinise anyway all the decisions coming through to this committee.
My concern was, as has happened tonight, if we have committee members who become board members, every time we discuss this subject, they have to leave the room, so there's no consistency. So I've got a feeling I prefer it to be officers. Is that what everyone else feels? Does anyone want to make a comment with that? Go on, Cherry.
The only problem with that is then it's perceived that it's officers that are making the decisions of this council, not the members.
I think, as Dave just said, though, if they become under scrutiny from ourselves, don't they? So they might put forward a suggestion, then we as the members will say whether we're for it or not. Is that right?
Well, I've certainly heard a comment today, or yesterday I heard it, from a councillor on another council that runs the committee system, and the complaint is that the officers are making the decisions.
With regard to this, the Borough Solicitor, can you give some advice about what the thoughts are?
Certainly, Chair. Those representatives of the council that sit on the partnership board are there to pursue the interests of the partnership as a whole, which is, of course, one of the elements that creates that conflict. But equally, the partnership is an arm of the council and is there to deliver the wishes of this committee in terms of taking forward development, putting the business case together for future site development plans and bringing them to here for you to approve and to tell those officers how you wish them to behave when they get to the board. The difference is, of course, they can apply their time in a different way. It is easier for you as members to hold officers to account, but harder for members to deal with conflicts and certainly when it comes to politics, the desire to vote, it creates a number of extra problems. So I do agree with the suggestion that's been made for what it's worth.
Well, this recommendation's in 2 parts. One's for the Assistant Director of Finance, which I think we're all happy to agree on that, wouldn't we? With regard to the second one, could we give it that one? Could we take that away for a moment and discuss with our groups about if we have anyone who would be interested in going on the board as councillors who are not on this committee?
Of course, Chair. So you may wish to draft wording such as the committee recommends the continuation of the 2 officers, but would wish for Policy and Resources to discuss further whether or not it is appropriate for members to be appointed, and if so, who.
I'm happy to put that forward. Does anyone want to second that?
Sorry, could I just come in? Could I just ask advice from Phil? Would it be, you said we could recommend someone from another committee, and since this involves quite often monies and that, Could I suggest, and I haven't discussed this with anyone, could I suggest that the leader of the council should be on this committee, on that particular governance?
Chair, if
We've put the suggestion forward that we go away and discuss two councillors, so that could be brought into the equation. Okay. So
Chair,
we're not going to rush into that. The first part of the recommendation, I think we all agree on that. Has someone seconded me on that part? Dave Mitchell. And the second part, which we're just discussing now, which is regards to the two officers or the two councillors being on the growth board, we'll take it away for further consultation with our groups and come back to the committee and tell them what we decide. Is that okay? Can we put, so we've worded that as, what was the wording you said?
Chair, that you would put it to Policy and Resources to consider whether members be appointed to the board and that discussions take place in the meantime within groups and group leaders.
So I'll put that recommendation forward. Does anyone want to second that? Andrew? Okay, Andrew Gardner. Thank you. I've just informed Tony what we've decided with regards to the growth company and the two vacancies, that we're going to go away and consult with our groups to decide whether we want officers or other councillors to go on it from each group. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Hodson, and thanks for deputising. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. That brings us to item 8, the work programme update. And for those of you with a hard copy of notes, it's pages 23 to 30. Can I also take this opportunity to remind members that we have a budget workshop which has taken place in September, and I'm sure you will have all been circulated with the appropriate invites. Does anybody have any questions or comments that relate to the work programme update? No, I'll take your silence as acquiescence that everyone is happy with it then. Can I, in conclusion on this agenda item, ask for committee members to approve the work programme for the remainder of the municipal and civic year, and to either agree by assent, or should that not be the case, I will ask our legal expert to actually note a vote. Everyone agreeing by assent? No dissenters? No? Thank you very much. That brings us to item agenda 9. This is an exempt item, and can I remind the committee that the following item is exempt, and ask for any members of the public to take their leave of us, please. The following item contains exempt information under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, which requires the public to be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items of business on the grounds that the Wirral Growth Company report involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by paragraph 3 of the Schedule 12A as amended to that Act, and that it should be considered exempt under paragraph 1 and 5 of the Act. The public interest test has been applied and favours exclusion.
Have we put the webcast off?
I'm sorry, I didn't